Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Dais, a podcast about the stories taking place in and around El Paso County, Colorado. I'm your host, Scott Anderson, and today I am proud to be joined by our El Paso County Clerk and Recorder, Steve Schleiker. How are you doing today, Steve?
Scott, I am doing well. Good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, good to see you, too. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but it's been about a year and a half since we did our last one of these, so I'm excited to catch up with you and see how things are going. But before we get started, I want to quickly add that if listeners are interested in more stories about people doing good in and around El Paso County, or hearing from county leadership about local government priorities and how they operate, you can find additional episodes of this podcast on your podcast platform of choice. But to get started today, Steve, I was wondering if you could reintroduce yourself to people. It has been, like I said, about a year and a half.
Yeah.
So for those who might have missed our last conversation, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Oh, my gosh, Scott. Ran to be the clerk and recorder, got elected back in 2022 and sworn in to become the clerk in 2023. To be honest with you, Scott, I don't know if you get sworn in or sworn at when you become clerk and recorder.
Or any elected official for that matter, right?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I'm not too sure if you know, but, basically really grew up my whole entire life here in El Paso County, being an Army brat. Moved here when I was in first grade in 1975 and grew up in the Security Whitefield Fountain area. And then left for a little bit as I was in the United States Marine Corps for 11 years and decided to come back home. And I got tired of sitting there trying to figure out which way was north, south, east, west on the East Coast. Now coming back here, I'm going, okay, west, mountains.
Yeah, we at least know where west is. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. But no, in fact, as soon as I got out of the Marine Corps, I was hired on by El Paso County, and I've been here 26 years and now serving as the clerk.
That's awesome. So the last time when we spoke, you had just been elected to your current position. Yep. I think you'd been in for about 6 months. Talk to me what's been keeping you busy for the past year and a half.
Oh, my gosh. I tell you what, though, Scott, I couldn't be more blessed with the team that I have in the clerk and recorder's office. We've been extremely busy. 2024 was a very busy year. We had 3 elections plus a recount. Mm-hmm. So, on the election side, it was just nonstop, where we had 2 playoff games, which was the March 5th presidential primary, June 25th state primary, then the Super Bowl, leading into the, November general election. And then guess what? We had a Pro Bowl with a, with a recount after that. A lot of things there that I felt went absolutely amazingly great here in El Paso County. We were number 1 in the state as far as the number of ballot turnout and things like that. I'm extremely proud is since November 2023, El Paso County has been beating Denver and Jefferson County as far as voter turnout. So we got some work there to do because, I'm very competitive and I just don't like beating Jefferson County by 30,000 votes. I think we could do a lot better and get people out there to the ballot box. We made a lot of changes in motor vehicle and driver's licenses where we opened up our dealer desk. And what that did is our dealers who come into our motor vehicle branches with hundreds of titles that need to be worked, on vehicles that used or new vehicles that have been sold. And what was happening that was backing up our wait times. So, folks that will sit there and take their lunch break or come in after work, or even on a Saturday, they were sitting there for an extended period of time because we're sitting there working dealer titles. So I opened up a dealer desk that is totally dedicated to motor vehicle dealers and auction houses. So that has dramatically reduced the wait times for our citizens that are coming in to register the vehicle or title their vehicle, things like that. So that has gone over exceptionally well. Our dealers absolutely love it, where they can come on in and just drop their paperwork off and leave. Mm-hmm. And so, we're still working a little bit on the operational aspects, but we have made a significant operational impact there. And then in recording is I received over $500,000 of grant monies from the state of Colorado. And what we did is we basically indexed and scanned all of our 1980 through 1989 images, which were not into a digital format. So we did that. And so my goal is, before leaving as clerk, is to get everything back to when we became a county, back to the late 1800s, scanned and digitized and indexed into our system. And that's something that is actually a realistic project we can do, because one of the things is, as we work backwards, our population also went backwards.
Sure.
So you're looking at less documents at that time that we need to go ahead and put in there. But to me, I think that's something the citizens want to sit there and have the availability, is go back to the creation of El Paso County, to when we became a county in the late 1800s to where we are today. The other thing is updating our recording system as well, where we now provide property fraud alert to all of our property owners here in El Paso County, where if a deed, if it doesn't matter if it's a quit claim, beneficiary deed, warranty deed, or lien is filed on their property, my office notifies them to let them know that has been filed. And if it's something that they did not initiate, then we can sit there and have that basically turned over to the district attorney to be looked at and take legal ramifications. But since launching that program, which was in February of 2023, we have seen 0 attempts in El Paso County of property fraud.
Oh, wow. How does that compare to what the numbers looked like beforehand?
So, property fraud is not a real big thing, because what happens is fraudsters, thieves, what they want to do is they don't want to sit there and take the property. They basically, what they want to do is they target a lot of our senior community that have their homes paid off. Mm-hmm. And they understand that, hey, there is absolutely no liens or loans against this property, no encumbrances. They just want the money. So they will sit there, go to a bank saying, hey, I own this property. I want to go ahead and take out a line of credit or refinance just to pull money out of the home. So when I was county assessor, there were 6 cases that we actually caught. One of which was a big case up on 19th and Uinta, where that gentleman's now serving over 20 years in prison.
Jeez.
Yep.
Jeez. No, that's really great. And one of those things that I think when you look at the title of clerk and recorder, I'm electing clerk and recorder. What do they actually do? Who knows? DMV, right? Okay, maybe they ran elections, but yeah, I think this is great to hear, because it's one of those things that I don't think a lot of people think about. When they think, "Oh, I'm electing clerk and recorder,"
yeah.
What are they going to be involved with?
Yep.
That's certainly not one of those things that I would have considered. So that's really interesting. So I want to get to the election that we just had here in 2024. I actually got a lot of different questions about it on the screen here, but I'm going to kind of work, let's say I'm going to work from this point in time and go backwards. I want to ask about the recount, because I think recounts, they don't always happen.
Right.
I think in this specific case, and please correct me because I know I'm going to be wrong, I think there was a difference between the two candidates of like 6 votes.
You got it on the head.
So, okay.
Yeah.
I don't even have that in my notes here. I'm just trying to remember from what I read. 6 votes. And, to me, that's like the prime example of every vote counts. Every vote matters, right?
Scott,
so
absolutely.
Get out there and vote, right? So like if you are a little bit more cynical when it comes to voting, like here's a prime example that happened in a county this large, where you can say, one vote might count in smaller counties that have maybe 10,000 people voting, or 5,000 people, right? But this is a county of 750,000 people roughly, and this specific instance, 6 votes was the difference. So first of all, talk to me about that recount process and what that looks like, and talk to me about how, when it is that close, when the election is that close, how you guys sort of activate and say, okay, guys, this is something that we're going to have to take a look at.
Yeah, and Scott, I'll tell you what, it was one of those where one of which is Colorado law came into effect, because if it's basically between the challenger and the incumbent, is if the vote count is less than 0.5%, is it goes into automatic recount. So we did receive the order from the Secretary of State's office to do a complete recount in House District 16, and we actually had our finger on the pulse on several races that were extremely close, one of which was Senate District 12. The other one was Palmer Lake Mayor. The other one was City of Colorado Springs Question 300. So we were sitting here watching those particular races very close. But what came down to the mandatory recount was House District 16. So once we received the order, is we basically compiled, we brought the judges back in, and these are some of the judges that are, veterans. They have worked the process many times, have worked many elections. So we brought them on in, and one of the things that we had to sit there and look at is we have to have the recount done within a statutory time frame. So as soon as I received the order, which was Tuesday, the week of Thanksgiving week, okay, is we had to have the recount done the Friday following Thanksgiving week, and that had to be up there for the Secretary of State and the governor's signature to be certified.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here looking at 387,000 ballots to be recount. So there was a contained choice, and I had option A. Do we just go through all nearly 390,000 ballots, and do we just pull the ballots out that are, basically within that House district, mm-hmm. or do we just do a complete recount? So, Scott, I made the decision we're doing a complete recount. I've seen processes like this work out where at the end of the project, you're going, we're missing a ballot. Where's this at? And you're trying to find that amongst 390,000. So the decision was made. We were going to, retabulate every single ballot that was cast here in El Paso County for the general election. And I will tell you, I couldn't be more proud of the judges, of the supporting entities here in the county that helped us out, and my staff, because we worked through Thanksgiving week. And if you remember, Mother Nature was actually beating us pretty hard with nonstop snow during that time.
Oh, I remember, all right.
Yeah. But I will tell you is no one complained. Everybody was like, here's what we have to do. So we got through the recount, and the Wednesday following Thanksgiving week is when we held canvass. And that is where we have a Democrat representative assigned by the local party. Then we have a Republican representative assigned by the local party, and myself. So you have 3 canvass board members. And we basically sat down because going into the recount, there was a 6-vote difference, as you shared. And out of 60,000 votes that were cast in that House district, Scott, every vote does matter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, holy crud.
Yeah.
But what happened is at the morning of canvass, both candidates were actually tied. So we ran the reports, and believe it or not, talking to the Secretary of State's attorney, and I am like, Caleb, has this ever happened? And he's like, I don't think it's ever happened in the state of Colorado. And per statute, Scott, you're not going to believe this, is if a race is tied, you put both candidates' name in a hat, you pull out the name, and whoever's pulled out basically is the winner. And I'm going, this is not going to go well.
People don't like that, I don't think.
Or the thing is, there's always a joke that your local clerk and recorder has a brand new deck of cards. Right. So when something's that, if it's tied, whoever pulls high card wins. But what ended up happening is when you go into canvass, because you have all the watchers, you have the Republican watchers, their attorneys, the Democrat watchers, unaffiliated. Mm-hmm. But at that time, we sat there and said, hey, let's pull the 6 ballots that were adjudicated, basically for this particular race during the general, and let's look at the adjudication piece on from the recount. And so what was addressed there is 3 votes actually through the adjudication process went to the incumbent, Steph Vigil. However, there was 3 votes, 3 ballots, where a voter would basically circle the oval Then they crossed the candidate's name out, saying, I no longer want to cast a vote for this individual. So it was an undervote.
Okay.
So that's where the 3 votes came from, is the voter at that time, they made a decision going, I no longer want to vote for this particular candidate, and they crossed their name out, and they actually did exactly what the instructions on the ballot say to do. So that's where it came. And so that race, I believe, is now the closest race in Colorado history.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. I love hearing stuff like that because, it just doesn't happen all the time.
No.
And being able to be around for something like that and see the process at work. Because, again, a lot of the times, like, we have all these rules in place for good reason, for, stuff like the voting process. And, you hear about, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? Well, the what if scenario came into play, and you actually got to see it take place. So I always love hearing about that kind of stuff. You mentioned the high voter turnout this time around. November 2024, obviously a lot of people were very interested in the election.
Yep.
And you have friendly competition with other counties based off of that. But I want to talk a little bit about that high voter turnout and what that means to you to know that people are coming out to the polls still. I mean, again, I think it's been increasingly easy to just say, again, just throw the refrain, my vote doesn't matter, or, whatever happens will happen. But people being really engaged in the process this time around. What does that mean for you as the clerk and recorder?
What it means is we're getting our message out there. Just sharing with folks why your voice does matter. We worked with a lot of local entities here in the county, like the League of Women Voters, doing voter registration drives, worked with a lot of other places. We actually tried something new, Scott, as well, as we worked with an organization on the west side of Colorado Springs called West Side Cares. And one of the things is I was working with their executive director, who is absolutely a very kind, awesome young lady. And what we were noticing is ballots were being mailed to Westside Cares, but they were not getting to the individuals that are using that address for their mailing address. So we basically were sitting there going, what are the chances? What would happen if we actually treated Westside Cares like a healthcare facility? And what that means is there's healthcare facilities here in El Paso County where the registered voters have a community mailbox. They don't have their own mailbox. So what we do is our bipartisan judges, which are, judges that are of the Republican Party and Democrat Party, they hand deliver the ballots to the residents there, and they go through the, basically assist them if needed. But the, individuals there, they basically cast their ballot and they vote and give it to the judges. That goes into a secure ballot drop box. But we did that with Westside Cares this year. And I think we're onto something where allowing individuals not only to register, but to participate. And the thing is, these individuals that are in this situation of either be considered homeless or just, in a very bad situation are going, at least I still have my vote. And so those are the things that we did is we got a lot of messaging out there. We worked extremely hard, but there's still a lot of work to do. And I think the turnout could have been better, to be honest with you. And Scott, the reason I feel that way is a lot of voters were intimidated by the size of the ballot. Because there was a lot of initiatives, a lot of constitutional amendments. We're voting on a lot of judges, and one thing that I did see is a lot of undervoting, where voters would vote for one or two particular races. They would vote for President of the United States in a congressional race. Everything else was left blank. So just talking to voters, after the election, is they were actually intimidated by the length of the ballot and truly not understanding what the amendments or the initiatives that were sent down by the state. And, they're like, hey, I understand the Blue Book, but I just don't understand this to make an informed decision. So to me, is I actually feel there should be a limit on what goes onto the ballot because it does have an impact on voter turnout.
So when we were talking about the recount, obviously that goes beyond Election Day and the work that the Clerk and Recorder's Office does. I think, again, if you're someone who may not be completely familiar with the process. I was definitely one of those a couple years ago before I started working at the county. Your office goes way beyond Election Day in terms of how you guys prepare for the Election Day itself, and then any work you have to do post-Election Day. Talk to me a little bit about all of the, I guess maybe the timeline of what your office looks like when we are coming up to one of these bigger elections like we had in November.
Yeah, so Scott, we were actually working on the 2024 general election a year prior. For example, we have a coordinated election coming up in November of 2025. We are already working on it. There's a lot of planning and, operational things that actually go into it. But there is a big difference between a presidential general than a coordinated election. Really, it comes down to the number of in-person vote centers. How many judges am I going to have to hire? So, for example, is for the 2025 coordinated election that's coming up in November, I may have to hire 300 election judges. But for the general election we just went through in November of 2024, I had to hire over 800 election judges. So we're talking quadruple the amount. So the planning and efforts that go into it, just basically working with our party leadership, our local party leadership to ensure, we have the right number of registered Republicans that are judges, the right number of registered Democrats, right number of unaffiliated, because you always want to have that bipartisanship. Mm-hmm. And anything in the election office, you will always see a Republican and Democrat team together. You will never see two Democrats, two Republicans, or two unaffiliated. Mm-hmm. So they're all there as a team. So with that being said, it was about a year, and so we are just now finishing up the election from November because we're still compiling invoices when we had to do rental cars, pay out election judges, buy them dinner on election night, get assistance from the Office of Emergency Management or law enforcement. And so we're getting ready to submit that to the Secretary of State for reimbursement to the taxpayers of El Paso County. So although, the election is over and we're basically 3 months after the election and we have a new administration in the White House, as many of your clerk and recorders are still finishing up that entire election. The other thing is a lot of voters are like, hey, Election Day, November 5th, it's over. Not for your clerks.
Right.
Because you know what? Numbers change 8 days after the election because we're still receiving our UACAVA, which is our overseas military ballots. Mm-hmm. In addition to that is voters that actually get a letter from the clerk going, your signature didn't match. You need to come in here and cure your ballot, or you did not sign your affidavit to do that. So they have 8 days to cure. So that is really confusing to a lot of individuals because they're like, hey, Tuesday, Election Day is over. The election is over. It's not. We were still working ballots. And as you saw, that played out significantly in House District 16 as those numbers got closer and closer and closer leading up to the 8 days after election, which then led to the recount.
So you mentioned this relationship that the election judges sort of have with one another. This is something that I just learned about, as you said it just now. Talk to me a little bit about how that works for your office, I guess, specifically, because one could think it's possible that it might be difficult for people of opposing views to work together in something like this, where, their candidate or their opinion or whatever is on the table and they have to sort of conjoin that with someone else's opinions, right? And how have you seen those individuals put all that stuff to the side and just say, hey, we're here for a responsibility, and that responsibility is to essentially uphold democracy? Not to put too fine a point on it, right? But that's really what they're doing. So how have you seen those relationships play out and see them kind of put those differences aside, whatever they may be, and work together to get through this process?
Scott, that was my assumption when I, first became clerk and recorder. And my first election was the 2023 coordinated in November. And I'm sitting here going, I'm going to have to give a very stern speech that, politics aren't allowed here,
right.
Blah, blah, blah. But believe it or not, I have never given that speech. And it's actually not weird. It's fun. I guess it's funny. Each and every election, these judges come back, and it doesn't matter if they're wearing a purple lanyard because they're unaffiliated, or a blue lanyard, or a red lanyard. It's like a family reunion. These folks have been friends with one another, for a number of different elections. They're very close, and I actually look forward to the elections because these folks can bake, they can cook, all the goodies that they bring in to share with one another. They're hugging. How have you been? How's the family? And the thing is, I will sit there and share is with our judges, at no time have I ever had to sit there and say, politics are not allowed in this office. Mm-hmm. They take it very seriously. They want to ensure that the election is safe, secure, transparent. And they work extremely hard. And these are individuals, Scott, they're our neighbors, our friends, our family members that are actually the ones coordinate the election. They're the ones working it, where you're doing the ballot processing, the signature verification, the tabulation. They're also the teams that actually put the results in the election night reporting system. So it is these bipartisan judges that do all of the work. My staff and I just oversee it. I guess a great analogy would be my staff and we move the rudder, but it's our election judges pulling the oars.
Yeah, no, that's really great and very reassuring to hear. Almost that's sort of the environment that exists when there is, a lot on the line, right?
Absolutely.
There's a lot on the line for a lot of people. Again, you have over 300,000 people voting in El Paso County alone, so a lot of people are invested in the outcomes and want to see it. So that's really great. Earlier, you mentioned how you did some coordination with the sheriff's office and with the Office of Emergency Management. And while that might sound ominous as a title of an office, they're actually a really great group of people that does really great work. Yep. But how does the Office of Emergency Management work with the Clerk and Recorder's office for an election? What does that partnership look like, and how did it benefit you guys this time around?
It's never happened before as far as the handshake agreement and reaching out to the Office of Emergency Management. But Scott, as I was sitting here, as we were getting closer to the election, it was right after the presidential primary that I started sitting there, basically looking at the races that were basically going into November. And just to share with you complete honesty, is there was a lot of anxiety in the November election. And I felt as clerk and recorder, no matter who won, there was going to be some upset people. And my job as clerk and recorder is to ensure a secure and safe election, to include the safety of all of my election judges, my staff, and all the voters that participate. So one of the things is when you are in the largest county in Colorado, the most populous county, which then equates to the most active voters in the entire state, that's basically a huge task. When you're sitting here looking at the security of 39 in-person vote centers, 41 ballot drop boxes, and just 800 election judges, just a number of different things, I sat there and I said, you know what? I have an amazing relationship with the Office of Emergency Management, which was garnered during my time as county assessors when we did the Waldo Canyon fire, the Black Forest fire, the landslides in Skyway, the floods in Manitou. So I actually had an amazing relationship. So I reached out to Meredith, Sarah, and Andrew and just shared my concerns, and that my number one priority was the safety of all. And I will tell you, it was one of the smartest decisions I made, because one of the things is we ensured the safety of everybody at the ballot boxes, the safety of everybody at the in-person vote centers. The other thing is our law enforcement played a significant role in traffic at our ballot boxes on election night. So they were prioritizing the voters. And if you remember, Scott, is Mother Nature and I'm going to send her a thank you card, but it was an hour after polls closed, and it started snowing. And where we do the ballot processing and the counting and things like that, is by 2 a.m. we had over 7 inches of snow up Garden of the Gods. So believe it or not, is our law enforcement was out there. They were prioritizing the voters to ensure that their ballot was cast by 7 p.m. They helped out at every one of the VSPCs, with traffic and making sure, hey, if you're in line at 7, you're going to cast your vote. Our facilities department, our security staff that works for the sheriff's office, they helped out tremendously to ensure to get people out of the snow as they were standing in line to wait to cast their vote in in-person vote centers. They were plowing, the walkways, shoveling the walkways, making sure everybody was safe. But to me, it was an absolute no-brainer, especially how large this county is to basically have that asset of to help us out, help the voters out, and ensure the safety of our judges as well. And it went over exceptionally well. So it's something, Scott, that I am proud to say that I've been asked by a number of major, larger counties throughout the United States of why it worked, and they're thinking about doing the same thing. And I'm like, these are assets that are here in El Paso County. Mm-hmm. But I don't think anybody's ever thought about reaching out to them, and it was a no-brainer to Andrew, Meredith, and Sarah and I. Yeah,
no, that's really great. I love it. We talked about this a little bit before, but just like finding those new ideas and executing on those to see how it works out.
Well, and if I could throw in there, Scott, you played a major role.
Major is overstating it.
Yeah, no, because, one of the things that also concerned me was misinformation. Mm-hmm. And when you're going into a major election, and now we're dealing with this thing called AI, which did impact several states. But one of the things is when you're dealing with and have the relationship with OEM and also with yourself, if there is misinformation being put out onto social media, is working with the OEM and working, with the PIO here in the county, is we can sit there and, say to the citizens, no, that's misinformation. And we work with our local media outlets to basically put the truth out there. Mm-hmm. But it's also a tool to fight against misinformation during an active election.
Yeah. It was really fun. Fun. People have different definitions of fun. It was fun, though. This was my first general election being a part of the county, and going through it and experiencing just this side of the fence, I guess. And so it was fun experiencing that, and seeing the information that would come across, and how do we get this information out to people as best as possible. So it was a great learning experience for everyone. But I think, like you said, that partnership with the Office of Emergency Management, it's nice when you have a single point of contact where all the information flows through, where you can just share all that information, and then they can give you feedback immediately because they have those connections to everyone else. So I did think that it was a very smooth process. We had a meeting about this last week, so it's fresh in both of our minds. But that was a really great experience. So you've been in office for 2 years now.
Yep.
You've got at least 2 more years to go. What have your first 2 years taught you that will help inform the next 2 years in this role for you?
Oh, my gosh. The first year, Scott, that I came in is I made a promise to myself to take the cotton out of my ears and put it in my mouth. And I see you laughing, going, "Where's he going with this?"
My finger's on the mute button, but keep going.
So, I sat there and shared this is a time for me to listen, not only to the staff, but also to the citizens that had concerns about elections, or about motor vehicles, or even the county leadership here in El Paso County. Is take the cotton out of my ears and put it in my mouth and listen. And many of the changes that my office has done over the last 2 years, which have been significant, we have completely revamped the elections department in El Paso County. We have been working extremely hard, and we still got, a lot of work to do. But we have basically turned El Paso County elections into nearly 100% transparent, where the voters can actually watch everything in regards to election from the comfort of their own home. And that's what I've was told is folks wanted more transparency. They wanted more, election security. And that is something that we worked extremely hard on. We started with the voter rolls, where I was the first in the state to partner up with Experian in doing that. And Scott, we have gone from an election where there was 49,000 undeliverable ballots, which meant these are 49,000 active voters that never received their ballot, and they're basically brought back to our office. So from that election 2 years prior to our general, to all the work we've done in 24 months, to the November 5th, 2024 general election, we had 9,000 undeliverable ballots. So comparing apples to apples, is in 2 years, our number of active voters and the number of folks calling El Paso County home has gone up. As we know, we're the most populous and we have the most active voters in the state. So with that being said, is when we're going from 49,000 down to 9,000, that has saved the taxpayers over $170,000 thus far, but we still have some work to do. We're the first in the state to where we actually stream our ballot boxes. And so, everybody can pull up all 41 ballot boxes and watch the live videos during an active election. We are the first in the country where we put out a GIS election platform, and where I worked with Spatialists to put this together where folks can actually watch voter registration live, and they can actually look at the election going on live and actually go down to the precinct level and see how many votes have been cast by percentage in each precinct. It's a great tool for our parties. It's a great tool for the candidates, stepping up to run for a particular office. But most importantly, the citizens are sitting there going, there's a lot of rumors out there, I should say, where folks are like, hey, here in Colorado, we have a lot of individuals that will sit there and change their party affiliation to go into a primary and affect the primary election either for the Republican or Democrat Party. Well, now our citizens in El Paso County can actually sit there and see those numbers. And of course, since we've launched that site, that has not occurred. Where we see large number of individuals, changing their party affiliation just to impact another party's primary. So that is information that's out there. A lot of other things that we went ahead and passed is right now we're getting ready to launch a brand new election auditing tool. I contracted with a company called Savera. And what they're doing is basically they take all the ballot images along with the cast vote record, each ballot cast vote record, and the citizens can actually audit any election they want. So, Scott, let's say you're running for, Commissioner District 1, and citizens are like, hey, how did Scott win this race?
But I'd be asking myself the same thing, to be quite honest.
But, Scott, now here in about several weeks is we've just now put together all of the June 25th election data. Savera now has all the November 5th election data. We're getting ready to put it out onto a website platform. But you will be able to select, say, your particular race and every ballot that was cast in that race, right along with the cast vote record, where citizens can sit there and take a look at each and every ballot, and they can actually audit every single election question, candidate race here in El Paso County. So that is getting ready to go out there. But one thing I wanted to do is ensure complete transparency through the life cycle of a ballot, from the voter rolls through an active election, all the way to if anybody wanted to audit the election. And that's something that we have accomplished in 24 months. I still have some lofty goals to change here in elections. And, that's something that we are working on right now with the team, and also got some very lofty goals when it comes to motor vehicles, because I need to start having the conversations is as fast as this community is growing, is we have grown past having 4 branch offices, and we need to start having the conversation of, should we open up sub offices, smaller offices in our community, such as Falcon, Monument, Fountain, where our fast-growing communities are occurring.
Yeah, you're certainly not going to get a no from me on getting one out in Falcon. I'm just going to put that out there. No, that's all really great to hear. And we were actually getting near the end of the conversation here. So I was just wondering, is there something that we haven't talked about yet that you think would be important for listeners to know about?
Yeah, I think one of the things is to go back to your introduction, though, Scott, is what does the clerk and recorder do? And, one of the things is really it comes down to 4 statutory duties which are extremely important. And your clerk and recorder is really the face of the county because we're dealing with so many customers throughout a day. And your clerk and recorder is responsible for recording, being the custodian of the public record, issuing marriage licenses, recording death certificates, all real estate documents. We do all the elections except for municipal elections, which, the city of Colorado Springs has their own elections with their city clerk. Clerk to the board, which, of course, we basically are in charge of all the minutes, meeting notes, everything for the Board of County Commissioners. And, also going into motor vehicle and driver's licenses. One of the things is we are really only one of a handful of counties that offer driver's license services. Not every clerk and recorder in the state of Colorado does that. So, we took that challenge on and we help out the Department of Revenue. And we actually did probably over 25,000 more driver's licenses last year than the state did here in El Paso County. Then the other thing is, on the motor vehicle side is we're also the only county in the state that's open on Saturdays up at our Union Town Center branch.
Yeah. And what has been the feedback from that? I mean, because that is unusual, I guess I would say. I started my driving career. Is that how you say that? I started driving in the state of Texas, and I have lived in multiple states since then. Never have I had a DMV open on a Saturday. Yep. It has been saying it's inconvenient is tough because those are the working hours, right?
Yep.
That's when people work, right?
Yep.
But what have you seen from that from the residents here? Like what has been the feedback you've received?
Extremely positive.
Yeah.
I feel that nobody should have to take time off, use sick or vacation, or lose hourly pay to register their vehicle or renew their driver's license or to title their RV. So Saturdays is extremely busy. We're open from 8 to 1. But what I've noticed over the last 2 years, though, is there are a number of individuals that visit from neighboring counties. So they're driving down here to get title work done, to renew their driver's license, or even to get a marriage certificate because, we're open on Saturdays. It's a huge benefit to the citizens of El Paso County. There are times where, I got to give my staff a break where I will sit there and close one Saturday out of a month to give them a break because keep in mind, they're working 5 days a week. Most of the ones that are on Saturdays, that's a 6-day week. But at the same time, there's times I absolutely have to operationally close because the state's not open on Saturdays and we have no state support. So when things go down, such as our credit card machines or the drive system and things like that, but Scott, I'm going to keep it. Yeah. This is an absolute amazing benefit to the citizens. And I'm there almost every Saturday with my staff and talking to folks that are driving from Arapahoe County saying thank you.
Yeah. And I think just one thing to quickly point out about that is if you want to ask other people to do something, you should be willing to do it yourself. And
correct.
I think that's a great leadership quality that you demonstrate in doing that. Thank you for that.
I appreciate that.
That's really nice to see. Well, that brings us to the end of our conversation. Hey, Steve, I really appreciate you taking the time and for all that you do here at El Paso County. So thank you for making the time and for talking to me today. Really appreciate it.
Scott, good to see you again. And thank you so much for treating me kindly.
Yeah, hopefully it's not another year and a half before we do one of these things.
Definitely.
But if you are interested in listening to additional episodes of Beyond the Dais, be sure to look for us on Podbean or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.